Welcome, I'm Nina Griffin, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel. Today, we'll talk about the astrology forecast for February 2021. First off, I wanted to say thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who have made all of my work possible. I couldn't do it without you. If you are not yet a patron and would like to get early access to my astrology and magic videos, monthly Q&As, as well as other benefits, including the monthly magical elections PDF, please visit patreon.com/Nina Griffin. In addition, please subscribe to get notified of new videos as they get made public. All right, now let's dive into the forecast. February really marks the beginning of what I would consider an epoch, meaning a very long span of time that will really start playing out throughout the year. Now, in my 2021 forecast video, which is also available on YouTube, I recommend that you check it out if you haven't yet, really this early part of the year opens up an opportunity. And the opportunity is in a very particular area of existence. It's really the opportunity to create a better world for large groups of people. There's no guarantee that different governments or people will take advantage of those opportunities, but for the moment, those opportunities are there for the taking. Especially now, especially in February, but really for the rest of this year, and many would argue for the next several years, really as Saturn passes through Aquarius, collective movements become very important, especially as it relates to benefits for the public, infrastructure, things that are intended to make society as a whole better. Now, there is a new moon in February that is really going to kick this off, I think, very powerfully. It's going to be the new moon on February 11th at 23 degrees Aquarius, and we'll spend some time talking about it. This is an assembly, meaning you get lots of planets in one sign of all but one of the visible planets in Aquarius. So we'll have 6 visible planets in Aquarius with Mars in Taurus alone squaring this. Aquarius is the sign of the public good, any kind of resources that are used for the community or for the nation. The other thing that happens in February that really kicks off this new phase that we'll definitely deal with for the rest of this year is the Saturn-Uranus square, which is the first of 3 such squares in 2021. The other thing that kicks off this new epoch this month is the Saturn-Uranus square. And this is the first square of 3 in 2021. There's going to be a lot more on this crucial aspect in my videos. I've already talked a lot about it in the Saturn in Aquarius video, as well as the 2021 forecast. If you're a patron on the $5 tier or higher, there's also a special video just about Saturn square Uranus that you can view, and I encourage you to do that. Now, as I've mentioned many times, this Saturn-Uranus square is really about a couple things. It tends to bring epidemics and pandemics to an intense level. There was an opposition between Saturn and Uranus in the 1918 pandemic. And it also is political and geopolitical. It really represents that contest between the two extremes, authoritarianism and crackdowns on one hand, and then lawlessness and anarchy on the other. So really their major aspects, these 2 planets' major aspects, represent that ongoing negotiation and contest about where on that spectrum we land. Now let's get started with specific events going on. As you'll see, this month is full of events, especially in the second week, and it's almost like we get that early buildup of energy, very early, very powerful, and then the rest of the month is kind of all of the energy that was raised in the second week. So the first week of February 1st, we get the Sun square Mars at 12 Aquarius and 12 Taurus. What this usually shows is some kind of conflict between people in power on the one hand, which would be the Sun, and then people who practice violence, either as a profession, right, people who carry guns for a living, or people who practice violence recreationally, as it were. Now, the Sun here is in the superior position, so it is likely to prevail. And on a personal level, I would say around February 1st, if you find yourself in this type of conflict or dynamic, whether you're on the Sun side or the Mars side, it's certainly much better to be the Sun, who is the person in authority at this time. If we take on the role of aggressor or destroyer, which isn't always bad, but if you take on a Marsy role, you will be in the weaker position and you may not get what you want. February 1st, Venus will enter Aquarius, and the pieces will really start to shift into place around now. Other than the moon, Venus is the last planet to arrive into Aquarius for that new moon assembly on the 11th. Venus is about union and connection. And so I think around this time, we start really getting close to having an important agreement reached regarding collective resources. Again, this could be on a national, international level, as well as on a personal level, particularly if Aquarius is either important for you natally, or if it's activated for you, like for example, it's your annual profected ascendant as of February. Now here's when the fun really starts. That's going to be in the second full week of February. February 8th, we get Mercury retrograde conjoining the Sun at 20 Aquarius. This is a so-called inferior conjunction, which is what happens when Mercury is retrograde and conjoins the Sun. And it's really the halfway point of the Mercury-Sun synodic cycle, which begins with Mercury's direct conjunction with the Sun. Now, at this time, any kind of conversations, again, in our private life or publicly, media, politics, there's a strong focus on the intersection of technology, commerce, but also the government, right? So it's not necessarily a friendly conjunction. So I think we could see a lot of discussion about how do you rein in big tech, for example, freedom of speech versus, antitrust issues. I think that further changes to technology regulations are going to be discussed or announced at this time. Because it's a conjunction to the Sun, this discussion may not even be visible right now, right? Everything that's close to the Sun is hidden. It cannot be seen until the other planet moves away from the Sun. February 9th, the very next day, Saturn will make his morning rise at 6 Aquarius. And this is something you won't find in any ephemeris, but I've noticed that the Hellenistic concept of the set and rise of a planet into and out of the Sun's rays is just crucial. And it's incredibly, depending on whether it's rising or setting, it's very empowering or disempowering for the planet. Now, Saturn actually hasn't been visible because he was so close to the Sun since January 7th, so for about a month. As of February 9th, he emerges at 6 Aquarius. He rises out of the Sun's rays. This is an incredibly empowering moment for a planet, and I would expect that a lot of things that seem to have been maybe put on hold or not really moving forward since around January 7th suddenly burst into public view with incredible vigor and energy. So consequences and accountability, which I would say are two very important Saturn characteristics, are suddenly visible and real once more. This is, as I said, an extremely powerful moment for any planet. And so February 9th, which interestingly, as I understand it, in the United States will be the beginning of the second impeachment trial of Donald J. Trump, we're going to start seeing the incredible power and intensity that is invoked in this historic moment. Certainly the idea of consequences and accountability is going to be on everyone's mind around this time. The next day, February 10th, we have a couple important events. Mercury retrograde will square Mars at 17 Aquarius and 17 Taurus. As you can imagine, Mercury and Mars leads to a lot of intense confrontational discussions. It's really best avoided on a personal level. Public discourse can be intense now as well. And again, if you're dealing with an impeachment trial, yes, it's going to be fiery and intense. There could be lots of threats. There could be threats of violence, all of those things. Now, again, because Mercury's retrograde, I am not certain that there is a lot of movement forward as a result of these discussions. However, I think we're going to go down some pretty intense and interesting rabbit holes. On a personal level, probably best to stay out of these kinds of confrontations. Same day, February 10th, we're going to get Jupiter having a morning rise out of the Sun's rays at 12 Aquarius. For him, it's the first visibility since January 16th. Just like Saturn, it's this powerful re-emergence of everything that Jupiter stands for. It's a very strong moment for a planet. Here, because it's Jupiter, it's the re-emergence of the concepts of justice, but also the concepts of largesse and economic benefit, right? Jupiter rules money. So this week, I think overall, we're going to see an intense focus on really two major themes. One, the public good, right? Perhaps that will have to do with money because of COVID, right? Stimulus funds, that kind of thing, as well as the themes of justice and responsibility. But this week isn't done yet. Oh no. February 11th, we get that amazing new moon at 23 Aquarius. Now, new moons, as I see them, really seed a 2-week period until the full moon with a certain kind of focus. The focus this time is extremely single-pointed, very, very focused, because again, we have 6 planets in Aquarius here. It's a very rare configuration, as you can imagine. Because it's Aquarius, we'll be very focused on the public good and social reform, really starting on February 11th. What's interesting too is that these 6 planets will overcome Mars in Taurus, who is going to be squaring that Aquarius stellium. The ruler of the new moon is going to be Saturn, because the new moon is occurring in Aquarius, which is Saturn's sign. And how is Saturn? He is very well positioned. He is in his own sign. And in this new moon, he conjoins Jupiter and Venus. So he is bona fide, right? Bona fide meaning benefited by being close to these 2 benefic planets. So I think there's a lot to be gained here for the collective, for people as a group. It's a terrible chart, though, from the perspective of being Mars, right? Mars is in Taurus, in detriment, who is just about to get absolutely steamrolled, right, by this huge array of planets in Aquarius. So they all overcome him because this is an overcoming square to Mars. So I think it's, if you have one of those cartoons where a character just gets flattened by a steamroller, this happens to Mars. It's almost like the world kind of gets that last kick in at Mars after his defeat in January, and then this all kind of plays out in the remainder of February. On a personal level, this could be an intense period. I don't think it'll be for everyone, but it could be an intense period for you personally if you have important natal planets in Aquarius or Leo, or if these signs are your profected ascendant as of February 11th, right? February 11th as well, Venus will conjoin Jupiter at 12 Aquarius. So this makes that full moon really nice, right? It's happening exactly on a Venus-Jupiter conjunction. It's a very auspicious and I would say surprisingly harmonious conclusion to a lot of the confrontations that we saw this week. So the focus now turns to unity, Venus, regarding financial benefits and money. February 12th, Venus will conjoin Mercury retrograde at 14 Aquarius. So here we pursue unity via discussion and negotiation. New topics, if you're introducing any kind of new discussion at this time, could take some time to conclude. Mercury is still retrograde, right? So this could cause some delays. However, this aspect is very good for resurrecting earlier discussions, which could be concluded around this time. It'll be the first of 4 Mercury-Venus conjunctions this year. February 14th, which is Valentine's Day, Mercury retrograde squares Jupiter at 13 Aquarius. Discussions around money and generosity, again largesse, are important, both in the public discourse and also involving personal finances, banks, things like that. The rest of February is relatively light, except of course for February 17th in the 3rd full week of February, when Saturn squares Uranus at 7 Aquarius and 7 Taurus. So this is the first of 3 such squares this year. It usually augurs significant changes worldwide, especially in locations that are ruled by Aquarius and Taurus, but by no means exclusively there. For example, just to give you some ideas, historically Russia has been considered Aquarian, and Iran is ruled by Taurus. So they could see a lot of drama and even instability this year. It could be very bad for them, particularly with respect to the pandemic, because as I mentioned, Saturn and Uranus do often bring epidemic disease. There is a constant negotiation this year between institutions and the people who want to destroy them or change them dramatically, between totalitarian control on the one hand and anarchy on the other. Again, where do we land on the spectrum? This also represents an intensification of the pandemic, and my hope, although I'm not an epidemiologist, is that this is the peak for now. We may see 2 more peaks because of the repeating squares. In late spring, early summer would be the next one. February 18th, the Sun enters Pisces. Again, most of the focus, though, is still on Aquarius and the planets that are still there. February 19th, Venus will square Mars at 23 Aquarius, 23 Taurus, and this could be a violent moment. You know, Venus overcomes Mars, and that square really ensures some kind of struggle, as Venus does receive Mars into her domicile. Because of that, she may allow him some degree of freedom of action, although I do think that Venus overcomes Mars ultimately. February 20th, Mercury will station direct, finally at 11 degrees Aquarius. So we're starting to get some closure from matters that came up in late January as Mercury stationed retrograde. Closure, of course, may not happen this very instant, but we are on the way. Things are starting to get untangled. The very last week of February, February 25th, Venus will enter exaltation Pisces, which is really wonderful. It's this moment of elevation, of peace and harmony, as well as beauty, and the possibility of unity in early March. Pisces is certainly a very gentle place for Venus, and her transit through that sign can often signify some kind of exalted artistic achievements. This could be a good moment for the arts, which of course have struggled dramatically through this entire pandemic. Sometimes this transit can also show the elevation of a woman into a prominent role. Keep your eyes open for that. February 27th, we get a full moon at 8 Virgo, which is actually a lovely chart. It has exalted Venus conjoining the Sun, so I think there is strong opportunity here for unification, as well as for really positive agreements being made, right? Getting some kind of agreement on things that matter. Over the following 2 weeks into the middle of March, I think there's a lot of opportunity to bring people together surprisingly effectively. The lunation ruler is going to be Jupiter, and he is in Aquarius conjoining Mercury. So this tells me that a lot of these discussions could involve, negotiation because it's Mercury there, but it's going to concern money, right? Jupiter is the ruler. He is in Aquarius, which again has to do with those common resources, with things that are for the benefit of all. All right, thank you for watching. I'm Nina Griffin, and this is the Astrology and Magic channel.